Hello and welcome to episode 349 of the Stacey West podcast. My name is Gary, and oddly, for the second week in a row, I am your host after taking a little bit of a hiatus over Christmas. And it seems a long while since I've been joined by our imp in Gibraltar, the travelling man himself, Charlie Beeston. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. Yeah, it's been a while since we've done a podcast together, actually, isn't it? Definitely long before Christmas.
Don't get complex. It's nothing personal. It's just
fine. Like if you can avoid me or whatever.
Avoid you. I want a bed for a week when we go to Gibraltar. So
that's a very good point. Yeah,
I don't avoid any.
You can come into my kitchen. That's basically the size of my studio apartment.
So have you been good, mate? I mean, how have things been? I know some people, I got some feedback the other week that some people don't like the chatter at the beginning of the podcast, but I feel because we don't talk on a regular basis, it's important. Yeah. How's your Monday been?
Busy, very busy, as work is always busy on a Monday, and we seem to have people in the office that decide that they want to magically be sick every Monday. So just one of those busy days. To be fair, the whole weekend was just a bit busy. I just try and stay active, otherwise things get very boring, don't they? That's just life, isn't it? So especially after Christmas, just try and keep busy. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. What about yourself? We've delayed the podcast a little bit, so you must have had a busy day.
Yeah. It's been a little bit different. I've got a lot to do. Tomorrow I'm going to the foundation. So we've got this on the end of the itinerary, but we'll drop it in now. So tomorrow I'm going to the foundation. So as regular viewers know, I am running the London Marathon for the Lincoln City Foundation. And I want to kind of raise some awareness for what they do. And it's really easy to say, oh, I'm running it for the foundation, so that raises awareness, but it doesn't. That just makes people aware that there's a foundation. So tomorrow afternoon, I am joining one of their Fighting Fit classes, which is it's a class that they put on for people coming through or surviving cancer and dealing with cancer. I think they do it for people with dementia as well. So I'm going to join in that. I think Alice Carter from the foundation is leading that. So I'm gonna have the lot. I'm gonna put my shorts on. I'm gonna do my big Mr. Motivator thing, all that sort of stuff. So that should be quite good. Then I'm going up to the foundation to have a look at one of their youth clubs and see what they do kind of for the local community in the evening. Now, I used to attend a youth club in Rugby years ago, and I know these days youth clubs are not a thing of the past, but there aren't that many of them. So I want to see these things for myself, do some articles around those, and then I shall remain in Lincoln, and probably after having a dirty Colonel tea with his 11 blend of herbs and spices, watch the virtual trophy game against Bolton, which I don't normally go to those games, but I figure I'm in Lincoln, so it's may as well, isn't it?
Well, you're in Lincoln, so it's an excuse to have your KFC after doing all the work out during the day, so you've earned it. Is it 7 o'clock kickoff tomorrow night as well?
It is, yeah. The problem is I've got to leave the house really about 12:30 to get to Yarborough. I've got an interval run to do in the morning, which is about 7 or 8 miles as well. So, yeah, I don't know how I ever have time for a job these days. I really don't.
Well, exactly.
Now, let's get down to it, shall we? 3 minutes 46 in, we ought to talk about football. When the FA Cup draw was made, I think most people expected us to go out. It's not defeatist. It's not, it's just, they say a pessimist is never disappointed, which is something I always point at Andy Pearson when he starts online. You know, if you expect nothing and nothing happens, you're not disappointed. It's only when you expect something. So we went to Birmingham, didn't really expect anything, didn't get anything, but actually I think there are good things and bad things to bring away from it. So we will break down some of those good and bad things with our very limited knowledge because here on the Stacey West podcast. And we'll take, if there are any comments as well, we'll take some of those. Now, I think essentially we were playing a championship team. I know they're League One, but you look at their squad, it's championship level team. The one thing you've got to do when you play a team like that is keep it tight early doors, or even go and get a goal like we did when we lost to them at our place. So to be 20 odd seconds in and 1-0 down, oh my Lord, Charlie. I mean, you've seen the goal back. It was just horror defending, really, I thought.
Yeah, it was. It was extremely poor, and it wasn't really what you'd expect because it was actually some of the more experienced defenders. I think a lot of criticism over the course of the first half of the season and this kind of bad run has been levelled at a lot of our younger players. But I think actually it was some of the more experienced players for that first goal that let us down. And to be fair, that's what a lot of our defence is, especially on the right side of defence. It is more of a few more experienced heads. And then when they're letting us concede so early on in the 35 seconds in or whatever it was on the clock, 33, I think, you kind of sit there and you think, well, it's obviously going to be a bit of a long afternoon then, isn't it? If they're not quite up for it. Obviously didn't necessarily end up quite as sort of bad as that. But yeah, it wasn't right. It wasn't good enough. And we have the capability to be better defensively, which I think is the bit that angers us the most when we do kind of concede a goal like that. And it's happened a couple of times over the course of this season where I just think we've been a little bit sloppy. Shrewsbury away, for example, on Boxing Day, there was just another goal that I just thought was sloppy defended, and it was the same kind of situation, same sort of area of the pitch even as that one on Saturday.
But the thing is, these are good defenders. I mean, Tendai Deriqua, he's really the one that's been caught ball watching a little bit, and it isn't the first time. And the fact that he's had like 3 Stacey West Player of the Months goes to show that these are kind of one-off lapses. Sean Rowan was a part of our defence all last season. You've got Fordy O'Connor, who is statistically, certainly on the EFL Fantasy League, one of the best defenders in this division for headed clearances and aerial duels. We've got Adam Jackson to come into the side. We've got Lewis Monsma, who, he's coming back from a big injury, but we know that he's a strong defender as well. But he's chopping and changing all the time, I think, isn't it? And I think that could be part of the reason. So again, it's a different keeper this time with Zach Geacock coming in. No blame whatsoever attached to him for the goal, by the way. I thought Geacock obviously had a really good game. But it's just, is it that unsettled kind of defence? Is it the fact that, because if we go back to the Michael Appleton season, and I did an article where we'd had something like 23 different combinations of back three or back four or whatever, and goalkeeper as well. Can that be partly to blame for it? Because something's got to be blamed to blame for it.
It's difficult because during Michael Appleton, during one of the seasons, it wasn't necessarily too bad. During Michael Appleton's second full season, it was like that as well. That I think we went through, something like 20 games in a row where we didn't have the same back four. And you kind of, it is very easy to sort of blame that because look, at the end of the day, defenders are always the ones to sit there and say they need to know exactly who it is that's around them at any given point because they can't rely on watching other players on the pitch as much, watching their own teammates on the pitch as much as maybe a midfielder has a little bit more of a luxury to be able to scan constantly. Defenders don't get away with that kind of an opportunity. So they need to know exactly where each other are. And that's, you only really get that when you're playing 5, 10, 15, 20 games a season together. So, of course, that's going to come into it. But at the same time, we're not chopping and changing enough to really warrant that being the excuse, I don't think. Because we are still only using the same pool of maybe 3 or 4 defenders. Last season was basically the same thing. We had the centre halves and, Lewis wasn't playing, but we had the likes of, we had Alex Mitchell in there instead. So we had him, Pordy, Jacko, and then Rowan. And it was always 3 of those 4, and they were absolutely fine. And yes, they chopped and changed most weeks. It was very rare that we'd maybe go on a run of having 10 games in a row of the same 3 every game. But it wasn't, it wasn't anywhere near as poor as it was, and you couldn't use it as an excuse then. So I kind of argue that you can't really use that now as much as I'd like to pick it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for excuses. It's really just kind of a discussion point, and it's a good goal. And whatever we say about Birmingham second string, if they played it week in, week out in League One, would still be in the top 3 or 4 without a doubt. So we were still up against a very, very good side. And I think briefly, while they didn't kind of exert the sort of pressure that probably we expected, obviously Geacock then had to keep the score down with what I think is an outstanding save. And I think at that moment, Joe, I think if the goal goes in, that second goal goes in, I think then there could be a collapse. And with well over 1,000 Imps following, I think that could have really damaged morale. Zach Gcock, he's made the save. He's had a good game, by the way. His distribution was very good. His kicking is very good. I think last time I checked on the Stacey West, he's man of the match. And bear in mind, they only had something like 4 shots on target. So absolutely, real boost for Zach. Is he now a serious contender to put pressure on Wickens?
I'll be honest, I don't know how long George Wickens is out for. I don't know whether it was ever said or if I've just missed it. But I think it depends on how long he's out for and how much of an opportunity Gcock gets and how much he can continue to impress. I think based off of Saturday's game, you could very easily justify putting him in for a couple more matches, and you don't have to kind of rush Wickens back in when he is ready to be playing again. Do I think that he's better than George Wickens based off one performance? I haven't seen enough to say categorically yes. Haven't seen enough to say categorically no. But I think he was thrown into the deep end effectively on Saturday, and he certainly didn't shine himself in a negative light.
Now, we've got John Merrill who's watching, who's a Birmingham fan. He's made some good points, so I'm going to come back onto those as we move through the game. The first half, really, apart from that, there wasn't a huge amount of talking points. I mean, they were obviously the better side, but I thought in the second half we came out and we looked much better. And I thought there was elements to a degree of kind of the game last season. Was it Wickham or something like that, where we'd been outplayed? We hadn't been good in the first half. At this time of year, we came out in the second half. And I thought we were the better side, and I think John has actually said that. He's unlucky at the weekend. Second half, you were the better team, lacked at the top end of the pitch. And obviously that's been a complaint from some people for most of the season. It's something I've only really come on board with, if I'm honest, in the last month or two. And maybe that's to my detriment, but I thought that our strikers were scoring goals, but we have now lacked that threat. I mean, we had the threat against Wrexham, but we were missing chances, but slowly but surely it's been degraded. But there was lots of kind of green shoots of recovery. Now, I saw them against Stevenage. I thought against Stevenage there was some nice passing play. There was some nice little kind of triangles and that sort of thing. We're creating spaces, but it is that final third of the pitch. So were you impressed with the way that we came out in the second half, despite being 1-0 down at a big club in a big ground, not really expecting probably to get back into the game, certainly from a supporter's point of view. There was plenty to be happy about without us trying to be happy clappers and rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, of course there were. I think it's difficult, actually, because playing a team in the same division, even though Birmingham are a championship club in League One, and you can never really say that about any club. We've always said this about the likes of a Derby, Sheffield Wednesday, all those that have been in League One over the past few years. Look, they can't get too big for the boots. They're in our division for a reason. Birmingham just seem different to that. They just seem like they are this kind of total exception to any rule that you ever want to say about that, because they are just that good, and they have spent that much money. We can't shy away from it. But you still kind of can take plenty of positives and negatives out of it. A lot more than you can do if you're, let's say, a Salford going away to Man City, when you're going to get thrashed realistically. And there were loads of positives that I could see from a genuine kind of point of view, not a sort of consolidation. We're losing 1-0 against a better side, but we can at least take some comfort in this. It was genuinely, we looked like we were the better side for a lot of kind of the first half of the second half in particular. We really came out, and they kind of looked to still be a little bit kind of in their shell, maybe a little bit kind of shell shocked at just how much we had changed. Now, I don't think we were that bad towards the back end of the first half either, to be fair, but we weren't creating the chances, and we'll get onto that, I'm sure. And that's probably a little bit of the issue again in the second half, but we were certainly creating a little bit more, and we looked like we had that little bit more confidence with us. I agree with you as well that it was very similar to that kind of Wickham game, this literally a year ago today, I believe that was. Was the first half. Yeah. First half, we were misplacing passes left, right, and centre. That was the first game we'd played 2 up top as well. And like Ethan, I think, came out into his interview after the game and went, look, we were misplacing passes because we were expecting to have a central striker, but we've got 2 a little bit either side, and we had to learn from that. And they did. They took the first half to learn from it. The second half, they came up. And also in that game, Rico Hackett came on, and he was kind of the player who helped bring the ball forward a lot more. And potentially that does have another bit of a similarity to Saturday as well. And I think we've kind of got that in our locker. We've got the capability to be able to adapt. We've got the players in the squad. Again, it's just about those creation of the final chances that we are just missing. And it showed again on Saturday, unfortunately.
Well, I think we can bring John's comments in that I really liked a minute ago as well. So he said, for those of you listening at home, or for those of you that can't read, I was surprised you didn't target our right side of defence. We essentially had a CM, a central midfielder, playing right back and a right back playing centre back. Only surprised that it took the pen to put any belief in your side. Now, there's 2 points to pick up on there. One of the criticisms aimed at Michael Skubala from let's say, a vocal minority, but opinions are opinions and they're valid, is that tactically we are lacking at times. Now, I would refute that in that when you look at some of the games that we've played, for instance, Reading, we knew who to target, where to target. We put Makama up against their young lad at full back and he gave him a torrid time. So to take that on board, do you think that there was we didn't focus and target on a particular area, or do you think that's because, like John and Birmingham fans will know that that's the case, but we would look at it as Lincoln City and go, well, actually, that we can't focus our game plan there because it will leave us short everywhere else?
Yeah, I don't get on board with the whole, we're poor tactically, we're tactically inept, and any of this kind of criticism. I've got to be honest, I think we saw enough from the back end of last season to show that actually, in terms of tactics, we can play any team off the park, even if we've maybe got a slightly inferior squad. And it's difficult because, yes, okay, Gardner Hickman, who was playing right back yesterday as a centre midfielder, he's a championship central midfielder. Okay, yes, he's playing slightly out of position, but he's playing out of position against a League One side who are slightly out of form and struggling at the moment. So in terms of just targeting that, I think that may be, as much as I would like to think that we'd have maybe got a little bit more joy from that, the kind of like pessimist in the back of my mind is thinking, well, would it really have made much of a difference? Would we have really got as many opportunities there as maybe we would have done elsewhere? I don't know. I think, yes, on the face of it and looking at it on paper, we should be able to have created more chances because there definitely seemed like there were gaps in the Birmingham defence on Saturday that could have been exploited, but they were few and far between. But then it's about us taking the opportunities when we do get them. And again, I think that's just something that we struggle to do overall. And now I started thinking a few weeks back that it's actually it's less the strikers taking the opportunities, it's more the lack of the creation overall. Yeah. And with that, I'm just going to pick up on Kadamartri's effort, the one that everybody's talking about is this. He should have scored it. It was a fantastic opportunity and all of this. I don't think if that was any other game and we weren't in a bad run of form in terms of goal scoring, we'd have been sat there saying he should have scored that. It's an opportunity he can't miss. It's on the volley. Yes, all right, it's inside the area, but it's on the volley and he should put it slightly wide of the post. And it's curling anyway. It's got spin on it. I think it's very, very harsh to be sat there saying, he should have scored that. He should have put that on target. He should have put that in the back of the net. But I think a lot of that is just born out of the frustration. In terms of other opportunities, you look at, for example, one or two of Jovan's over the past sort of few weeks, last couple of months, and you sit there and think, actually, yeah, they're opportunities that you should be getting on target. Not the case for Bailey's, and that was an opportunity created. We're just annoyed that we're not taking them because those opportunities are so few and far between.
Yeah, I kind of buy into that. I don't know. I think when you look at the number of chances that we are missing, and people will point at Jovan's, but Bailey misses them, Fred's missed them. I mean, Bailey missed a couple against Shrewsbury as well, so it is really difficult. One person who certainly didn't miss his opportunity, and it wasn't even an opportunity, was Lyndon Dykes. And we've got to talk about it because when we score goals, and their world is, we go on and we rave about them. And actually, when we played Birmingham, there was 2 goals for them. I think Williamson got one of them. I can't remember the other one that were outstanding. I don't think you'll see a better goal scored against Lincoln City in the next 10 years. And I don't think I've seen a better one scored in the last 10 years. I really don't. In terms of technique, we're talking about a Scotland international, by the way. So we're talking about a top-notch footballer here. Let's make no bones about it. When we talk about their second string and we go, they've got Dykes playing for them. I watched him come on in the Euros in 2021 for Scotland. He's a hell of a player. But honestly, Joe, I appreciate football. So I think scoring a beautiful goal is like art. Sometimes it's like artistry. It's why I loved Eric Cantona, and it's why I loved Matt Letizia. I don't love him now because he's a right-wing bellend, but when he was on a football pitch and you put a ball at his feet, it wasn't a game to him. And it was the same. Eric Cantona particularly, it wasn't about a game. It was about creating moments. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Waiting for Eric. I think it's called Waiting for an Eric. It's a Ken Loach film. Superb. Stars Eric Cantona, who appears as a hallucination of himself to a middle-aged man. It's brilliant, honestly. It's a really, really good film. And in it, he talks. The guy's talking to him, and he asks him, what's your favorite? What is it that your favorite moment on the football pitch? And he says, I always want to create moments. And I'm not a Man United fan, but that's what Cantona did. There was the lob against Sunderland. There was a pass for Dennis Irwin. He created moments. For me, what Dykes did, and apparently John says it's ironic because Dykes has been god awful for them since signing. He just created one of those moments that it doesn't matter whether you're wearing red and white, whether you're wearing blue, whether you're bollock naked. When you see that goal, you just have to go, well, fuck me, that was good.
Do you know he's not even 30, Lyndon Dykes?
Is he not?
He's not. He's 29. He turned 29 in October. He's not even 30. That in itself was kind of the biggest shock for me because I'm thinking, right, we're conceded to a second string Birmingham striker who's 33 years old and just coming out of the Championship now. He's 29. It was an incredible goal. I think for me, when we at Lincoln score goals, and my favourite goals are team goals. Team goals that we've just passed it through the thirds and we've made teams look pretty stupid at the way we've just been able to play through them with ease and get the ball into the back of the net. They're my favourite types of goals. My favourite goals to concede
No, not mine. I'll tell you why when you finish. Yeah. Go on.
Well, for me, in terms of my favourite goals to concede, they are the goals that the likes that Lyndon Dykes scored on Saturday, because you literally cannot have a complaint really about anybody in that Lincoln side for that goal. That was just a piece of magic, and it was a piece of FA Cup magic. And fair play, that's going to be remembered by, I don't know, it might not be remembered by Birmingham fans, depending on how their run goes, but it'll probably be remembered by Lincoln fans in a few years when we talk about that goal that was scored against us in the FA Cup.
My favourite goals are always the moments of individual brilliance, because football is a game. It's about passing and a team, and you can move through. And I'll rave about it when there's 22 passes and the cross comes in and you nod it in. It's great. It's a wonderful team goal. But you can't clip that up into like a 20-second highlight reel. So sometimes they just look like normal goals, 3 passes. For me, it's those moments that are just that you don't get every day. On a football pitch, you see passes going every day. Okay, they don't always end in a goal, and it can be a great team move, and I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they're brilliant. But I just appreciate individual brilliance and flair, and I just appreciate the beauty in football. And as much as it pains me, I have no problem with Lincoln City losing 2-1 to that goal.
Yeah,
I really don't. If it had if it had gone in off his tap end from a corner or something like that, I wouldn't be interested. So anyway, after that, you 2-0 down. You expect their heads to drop. They actually don't. We get the penalty, harshish penalty. Joford, with air of John Akindi, by the way, kind of sauntering up and putting it in the back of the net. And then that's what John said, I think, a little bit further back up. The penalty created some chaos in the dying minutes. And he said it. He was surprised. I can't think where it says. There we go. Surprised it took the pen to put any belief in your side. And I think that's part of the problem at the minute. And this kind of wraps up the Birmingham game a little bit. I think we lack belief, because I think we've got a squad, bar 1 or 2, that's top 10 League One and potentially can knock on the door of top 6. I do believe that. We are obviously a striker short. I didn't think we would be. I thought my feeling was that Tyler Walker was going to come back and was going to be a big figure for us. I genuinely felt that. I don't know if I ever said it on the podcast. Didn't happen. Not going to happen. We're obviously a defender short, which I think we knew that going into the season with Saxon Early, who I don't think I've seen has gone back yet, actually. I don't know if I've missed that news or not.
It's not been announced, no.
But then losing Tom Heyman, not having the extra centre-half. We normally go 2 for every position, and we went into it with 5. So 5 centre-halves is 1 short. So they're probably the 2 areas I think that are the main issue. But I just wonder if it is just confidence. Do you know what I really wonder? If Jovan had got 3 and 3 and that ball comes across the field against Stevenage, he probably puts it in the back of the net. And when you're on a run, they say winning breeds winning and confidence breeds confidence. But actually, when you're on a bad run, I think that's partly to do with it. We more or less matched Birmingham City for 40, 45 minutes of the game. Arguably, we were better. It was their second string, fair enough, whatever. But it shows that this is a decent side that we've got. And we haven't been great on the run. We were crap at Shrewsbury. We were crap at Bolton. We were crap against Rotherham. But you take those 3 games out of the run, and it has all been about moments and circumstance. Wrexham missing a big chance. Exeter and Bristol Rovers starting badly, then dominating late on. There's been so many sort of nearly moments. And if 1 or 2 of those have been turned into an actual result and we've got a little bit of confidence, I think we could be flying. And Adam Ball says confidence is the key. Look at Man City. And so what I think we can take confidence from the second half performance, and it will lead us into Bolton. I think we've got to beat Bolton tomorrow night, but more importantly, we have got to go to Northampton and get a result and just stop that and get that confidence back.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. There is clearly a lack of belief. And in all fairness, I think fair play to the players, because I don't think they make it evident on the pitch when you're kind of watching them. You see some teams and things aren't necessarily going too well in terms of results or performances, and you can physically see them dropping that level of performance on the pitch. And I don't really think that we've seen that at all, which I'm a big fan of, because it kind of shows that no matter what's going on internally for a lot of those players, and if there is this kind of lack of confidence and this lack of belief, they're not kind of showing it to the fan base that are there paying their money to go and watch week in, week out, which, again, huge credit to them. I think back to, and I know it's a totally different scenario, because I'm talking about here a team who are now at the arse end of League Two, and we're talking about Birmingham City, who are going to be at the top end of the Championship next season, almost no doubt about it. But when we went to Cheltenham Town, the last away game of the season last year, and we went 1-0 down in that game, and there was so much kind of hype going into it, and you think, oh no, look, we're 1-0 down now. There's a real chance that this could drop, but it didn't. The intensity levels just stayed the same. They went up, and we knew we'd get something back out of the game. At the moment, this season, we go 1-0 down, and you really are struggling to see if we're actually going to get anything back out of the game in terms of points, or even much of a kind of proper performance that we can go and write home about. And that's kind of the difficulty, isn't it? And it is at the top end of the pitch, because if you score goals and you are a team that are able to put away 2, 3, 4 goals a game, going 1-0 down, you don't lose that same level of confidence as we are doing at the minute. And then you kind of turn on the defence, because you're like, you should be conceding those kinds of goals. But if we were able to score 3 or 4, no one would care. And you can't do that week in, week out. Of course you can't. It's unsustainable. We saw that last year. We might have scored 16 goals in a week, but we were never going to do that the next week after and the week after that, were we? But those moments, those games of brilliance, they can kind of keep that hope alive no matter what a particular game state situation is currently showing at. And I just think that's the part that we're missing at the minute. We're struggling to see that we're able to get back into those games, even if we aren't playing amazingly for the first half. And I think that's the difficulty, because we're always putting ourselves on the back foot.
Yeah, entirely true. So anyway, the FA Cup run is over, and people on Facebook or whatever contesting that it was an FA Cup run. Of course it was. If you get to the third round and you're a League One or a League Two team, that's an FA Cup run. And there's I don't know how I'm going to put this without offending people, and it doesn't normally bother me, but I do try. There's too much eagerness to be negative at the moment. There's plenty to be negative about. I get that. I understand that, and I can. There's elements of the club, not the club, but there's elements of our recent run and recent results which I'm negative about. But to kind of go, it wasn't a cup run because we didn't really get a cup run doesn't necessarily mean you have to play a big club. And by the way, drawing Birmingham in the third round 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago would be a relatively big draw. But there we go. We went away to Cheshire and we beat Crawley. It was 4-3. 3 games into the FA Cup. It's a cup run. Me and another guy I know on the Discord, might even be watching actually. I can't remember. Was it John? Might have been John Booth. Not sure. We're kind of questioning how much have we earned from this. And there'll be a 6-figure sum from the FA Cup run and the Virtua Trophy Cup run coming into the club. That's football fortune. So that's a cup run. There won't be anybody at the club going, well, we haven't really had a cup run this year, have we? We got to the FA Cup third round. We'll get money for it being moved for American viewing. I know you're looking at it. You're trying to do the maths now. It'll be a half decent 6-figure sum as well. It's not small. I think we worked out, a few £100,000, and I don't know the ins and outs.
Close to that.
Yeah, if you're still on the sports board, you probably know and can't say. So
no.
Anyway, so what I want to do, we have got a question coming on the Discord, and I want to tag it on this bit rather than the bit on the itinerary that I produced for you that says questions at the end, because it kind of fits. So it's from Charlie, not you. I think it's the Charlie who did the magic moments at the same time as I piggybacked onto somebody else and did it again on New Year's Day. And I think this is Charlie who actually did it as well with his little one. So he says, what does Skubala need to get the boys playing like they were in the second half of the Birmingham game in the league? Now, I'll pick up on this first, seeing as you're quite obviously distracted by your phone.
I was looking at the question.
And again, it goes back to what we've just said. I just think it's confidence. I just think that the players need to be confident. I know the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, but we haven't been doing the same thing over and over again. Maybe, dare I say, from an outside looking in, it's more concentrating on what we do. I think sometimes we go against certain teams and we are looking to stop what they're doing as much as what we're doing. And then it means that sometimes it's a little bit, what we do is a little bit predictable. I would like to see balance. You know how we played kind of like a lopsided 4-4-2 or whatever it was against Stevenage. I'm not a big fan of lopsided, and I know that we all get hung up on formations a little bit, but if we're going to play 3-5-2, let's play 3-5-2, not 3-5-2, but on the left we've got a winger and on the right he's going to tuck in a little bit and this is going to happen and that's going to happen, because then we know that a lot of our attacks are going to come down one side and our opposition can stop that. So I get that. I'm not telling Michael how to do his job because he's far more qualified than me, and I'm sure I wouldn't particularly like being told how to do my job by a previous manager, which I was once, whose name we won't mention anymore. I was happy to tell him how to do his job as well because he was shit at it. So what do you think? What does Skubala... Sorry. I'm not still bitter about it, honestly. Do you know what? I'm delighted that Swindon... Oh, no, they sacked him. So what did Skubala need to do to get the boys playing like they were in the second half of the Birmingham game? Charlie Beeston.
Win a game. I honestly just think it's just about breaking that duct at the minute. It's really difficult because I still don't think that we're playing that badly in a lot of games and a lot of moments. We're not looking like we're a team void of decent performances up and down the pitch. I just think there's certain areas in certain games that, look, we are just struggling with. We can't put the ball in the back of the net. And I don't think we're creating enough opportunities, but I also can't really pick out exactly where it is that we can create those opportunities more. We have the quality. We have got the flair in midfield. Look at Jack Moylan. Look what he can do. Maybe what we do need is actually just to play a little bit of an outlandish attacking game of football. One that we maybe haven't seen properly as all-out attack since Man City and that 5-0. Man City's under 21s and that 5-0. A little bit like when we went away to Barnsley. And I'm not saying, by the way, that we don't play with defenders, basically like we did in that game. But, for example, when we went away to Barnsley last year and we had like Danny Mandroyu in midfield, who by that point had never played a game in midfield for us and was always much further forward. And we didn't really have anybody sat in a holding position that game. So I don't think Ethan played. I thought he was out that game, if I remember correctly. And I just feel like something like that is just going to be needed so that we can get a good, strong attacking performance with lots of opportunities to get that confidence back in us. It's a risk, but at this point, I think it could be a risk worth taking. But I don't know. I'm the same as you. I think I have full faith in Skubala and him to be able to make the right decision to get us out of this. It's just an idea from me because I just think it could be quite fun to watch.
Ethan Arahan did play in that game.
He did. Okay.
Yeah, he did. So I've just checked. So there we go. Right. Well, I think that will conclude the first part of episode 349 of the Stacey West podcast. If you are listening in at home, what you're going to get now is an advert from our sponsors. Please do listen to it in its entirety. Not that you can skip it, but they paid for some phenomenal Indian food this Christmas for us, and they also pay for anything that we want to do, charitable, etc., which will probably be a donation to my own London Marathon efforts, because I don't know if I've mentioned I'm running the London Marathon in April. If you are watching on YouTube, what you're going to get is a little bit of a behind the curtain peek as we go through some of the comments. So we will be back shortly. I'll cut that.
I never got an Indian. You mean?
Yeah, but I'm not going to fly you back from...
I didn't turn up.
Right. Let's have a look at some people. So if there's some discussion points here that people have put, I may save them for later on because we've got some bits to discuss. So Andy Brown, Devon Imp is on board. Evening. Adam Bull is on board. John Booth is on board. Hello. Dominique Thorley is on board. Dean Wagstaff. Flotty Tops, which I really like. As we know, John is from Birmingham. Thanks, John. Steve Jolland is from Amsterdam. Never been to Amsterdam. It was always dangerous for me in my previous life, but now I'm a good boy. I think I'd be all right going to Amsterdam. James Harness thinks Monsma could have done better with their first goal. Should have stood the attacker up, but just ran past trying to block. Fair point. Who else do we have? We have Harrison. Chances are only created when the striker makes a run or puts himself in areas to score, which we don't seem to be doing. And when we do, we aren't taking the few opportunities we get. I disagree a little bit because I think we have got in some decent places. And actually, the Stevenage game, there was the Makama miss. I think it was my dad actually commented and said, McCarmel was there. Where was Bailey Cadamarteri? It might have been Pete while I was chatting to Pete. Bailey Cadamarteri wasn't there to put it in the net. So it's all right saying Bailey would have scored that. He was on the field. He didn't get there. So interesting. There's some talks about Dykes. Jason Wright says send him on loan. John Booth says Dyke, we could even afford his wages. Charlie Smith says sounds like a good loaner for us. And Jason Wright says they can subsidise with their riches. MK Spokes. Hi up, boys. What's up? All good. Just going through. Enjoy your fishing. I like that. Keith here, lads. Enjoy the podcast. The difference between last year's excellent run was we had Danny and Teddy in midfield for the majority. I do think it's creativity, and we'll have a little look again in a minute. Charlie says, love my support for the foundation. Eldest loves training with them on Saturdays. He's desperate to get spotted by the coaches there. Going to do more on the foundation, without a doubt. Really keen on what they do. I've seen lots of it firsthand. People don't realise there was even speaking to Jack Mulhall, and Jack said until I started putting stuff out there, he didn't really know, because although the foundation put it out there, if you get something in email in your inbox and it's about the foundation, it's not a sign-in, it's not a sack-in. People tend to skip past a little bit, I think. Joe Horner, while we're looking at experienced forward to add to our squad, is there a better loan move than Donny for Street? Well, they like him at the minute, don't they?
After he scored, thought of a dubious goal.
Yeah, seemingly straight for their side, learning from one of the best strikers there has been in the EFL. That's Billy Sharp, I think, isn't it? Who is absolutely right. Has been a hell of a player over the years. And ABP is evening. I used to play a game on the Commodore 64 called a PB, APB, All Points Bulletin. It was brilliant. Commodore 64, showing my age.
What's that?
Right, shall we look? Yeah, whatever. We'll look at coming back in. In 3, 2. Hello, and welcome back to episode 349 of the Stacey West podcast. You have just heard a word from our sponsors. The only thing that we said we did not want adverts for is the Sun newspaper, because nobody should ever read the Sun newspaper. So hopefully it wasn't that. If it was anything that offends you, our apologies. Right, what's next on the itinerary? JJ McKiernan. Now this will be a quick one to cover. So Chris and I covered it kind of on Thursday last week, because that's when Pete O'Rourke had broke the news it was going to happen. And I said at the time, usually if he breaks the news and it's just one move, he's just got wind of it early doors and he knows it's going to happen. Next day, what do you know? JJ McKiernan joins Burton Albion on loan. Now, we've just been talking about lacking creativity, I think, in the break a little bit, and lacking that Teddy Bishop or Danny Mandroyu type. JJ McKiernan probably has that. And this plays in a little bit to the interview that Michael Scabala has done today. So I'll drop that first of all, and then we'll come back to JJ. So he's kind of said, look, we don't need young players now. Excuse me. They're going to be loan players, and they're going to be probably, it sounds like they're going to be a little bit more experienced as well. Whether it's going to be in that midfield area or not, I don't know. So JJ's obviously 4-year contract. He's obviously somebody that the club rate highly. He hasn't gone to Burton Albion to be farmed out. It's not an Ali Smith type loan. Ali Smith won't come back to Lincoln City. JJ McKiernan will. I think it's a great loan for him. Burton are trying to play a bit more football. Gary Bowyer is a manager who plays a little bit more football. JJ's going to get minutes. And also, let's face it, it strengthens a team that isn't really a rival of ours. At the minute, we're not in a relegation battle with Burton Albion. Touch wood, or laminated black kind of ash chipboard on my desk. We're not going to be in a relegation battle with Burton Albion. That would be gutting, wouldn't it? If we got sucked into a relegation battle and McKiernan scored the goal to keep them up. It's not going to happen. But it's a good move for him to get the minutes at a level we want him to play at next season.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're 11 points away from safety, so there's no chance. I don't really think of them staying up the way that it's currently going. But yeah, no, they are a side who do want to play more football. They showed that actually in the very first game of the season when we went there. And, you know, it was a 3-2 match, and it was a proper end-to-end footballing game at certain points, especially that first half. So from that side of it, it's a great loan. Honestly, I've been a little bit outspoken about this one on Twitter as well. And I don't normally actually bother tweeting at all. But this one, I'm really, really impressed with this as a loan move, because we're loaning a player into League One. And this is a player who he's on a development loan with us. Like you said, this isn't an exit loan like maybe Ali Smith's is. this is a development loan so that we can get him fit and firing and ready to go, hopefully from the summer onwards, in and around our first team squad again. And we can't provide him with the minutes to be able to do that and to be able to develop as much as we want here. So why not let him go out on loan and hopefully get that elsewhere? I think it's a great move. And again, I'm really pleased that the level that we're now able to loan those fringe players out to is League One. It just shows the squad depth. Like, okay, we lack depth in certain areas so far this season. You know, we talk about the fact that we probably do want another defender. We probably do want another striker. You know, they're kind of the big areas at the moment that people would like to see an extra body or two. But in the summer, we were sat here raving about how great our squad depth was and how we've got so many options, by the way, especially in that midfield area as well, especially when people started coming back from injuries. So we were really pleased with that. And I think loaning JJ McKinnon out to Burton actually kind of just vindicates that point a little bit and just proves, look, we have got a midfield of maybe 5-6 players that are all good enough to be in League One. We simply can't give the minutes to all of them. So, yeah, we are just boosting up another side in the division. But like you said, it's not one who is directly against us. The only worry is, and I hope this isn't the case, but going into an environment like a Burton Albion who are destined for the drop potentially quite early if form does continue the way it is, obviously you don't kind of want the whole squad's heads to drop. And for that then to reflect on McKiernan, that's always a little bit of a worry. Potentially top-end League 2 is kind of better in those situations than bottom-end League 1. But like you say, they are willing to play football. And I think from a tactical point of view, it could be quite strong to see him go in there and have similar sorts of opportunities as he would do in the top end of League One.
Yeah, I look forward to welcoming JJ back next season. To be honest, I've seen enough of him to think that he's a player worth his keeping. John Booth said he's also part of him going out on loan was to free up wages for incoming loans, which I can kind of understand, because if we are heavy on players for his position, with Tom Bayliss playing there, Ben House can play there, Jack Moylan can play there, so it does make sense. And that was something we picked up on at the beginning of the season with the podcast, that, you know, actually, where are all these attacking midfielders going to play? You can have somebody in your squad who doesn't play for a season or two and then goes on and kicks on and does really well. And I always go back to the boy at Wigan, Callum Lang, I think it is, who I think is it might be at Portsmouth now, but he was, you know, loan after loan after loan, and it never looked like he was going to do anything. And then all of a sudden, he's blossomed and he's a decent player. So I think we've had a history in recent years of when we loan out more senior players, it tends to be an exit path. And you look at Zach Elbazzedi and you look at Theo Archibald and you do look at Ali Smith and players like that. They've been loaned out with a view to go. Hakeem Adelakan is another one. JJ McKinnon doesn't fit in that, and it's just, I think, a different facet of what we do, and because it's one of the first kind of development loans that we're going to do. I mean, even you look at Jay Ben, don't you, who's kind of come through Solihull Moors and Bradford, who's probably not expected to come back as well. So, yeah, really interesting. I know that kind of plays into what we were saying about today's interview. So Michael Skubala has more or less said, you know, young players are not what we need now. Loans are what we're going to be looking at now, and I think that feels quite sensible, because, you know, if you start bringing players in on permanent deals in January, that can backfire. And I mentioned it in an article earlier, and I really want to kind of get this point out. When we needed strikers a year or two ago, and I think it might have been the transfer window, we ended up with Luke Planch, which is really, really unfortunate. But Fleetwood went out and spent $6,000 a week on Jack Marriott and $6,000 a week on Jaden Stockley, and everybody was going, that's the sort of business you need to do. Well, if you were one of those people, and there will be one of those people listening in, or there will be one of those people watching, just tell me where Fleetwood are now. Simple. So that is not a route to success. So for me, going out and trying to spend money on a big name player in January is a route to long-term demise. The teams that will be spending big in January are one of two. They've either got the money to do it and it won't affect them, or they could screw themselves up for the next 2 or 3 seasons. Fleetwood have done it. There will be other examples. I haven't researched them. It's been a busy day. So loans make sense. Experience loans is really interesting. Now, John Marquis technically wasn't a loan, as was correctly pointed out by Dave Rook, but he kind of was. It was a temporary move to us. There was no fee involved. The reason it wasn't classed as a loan is because we still wanted to bring loan players in. I think that was the window that we loaned in Brook Norton Coffey, for instance. So technically it wasn't a loan, but he was kind of like a temporary player on a 6-month deal. There was Liam Bridcut came in the same, but it's very, very rare that we actually go out and get an experienced loan. Now, obviously, people are putting 2 and 2 together, me included, and coming up with either 4 or 22. We don't really know, because we said, well, that means an experienced striker. Not necessarily, might be an experienced centre half. But it was interesting because it's kind of a deviation from what we did in the summer, but at the same time, it's also complementary to what we did in the summer, because in the summer it was lots of young players, lots of long-term players. Now we're going, well, actually, let's bolster with some experience. Let's bolster with, and we haven't seen who these players are. So yeah, they're bound to draw criticism or whatever. But I think it's an interesting way to be going. We ain't going to be bringing in Nathan Lowe. We know we ain't going to be bringing in Joe Taylor. We're going to be bringing in experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Lincoln City's method, I'm going to call it a method because it's a little bit less toxic, if you like, than the other word that you could use for it, is win, develop. You know, that's what the club have said for the last good few years. It's making sure that we can develop.
Not doing the first
bit. No, you're right. So that's why I was going to start with the develop part first. It's making sure that we are able to develop those potentially slightly younger signings, those that we know that we can potentially sell on down the line for good future money, or can progress with the club to the point where they're ready to be playing in the Championship. And it's also making sure that we win to the Championship as well. You know, you can't do one without doing the other. So we've noticed over the first half of the season, what the club have noticed, look, actually, we are lacking that little bit of experience. We need players, for example, let's say, a slightly more experienced centre forward who can help bring on our younger players, like they hoped that Tyler was going to be. And that's exactly what Skubala said in the interview. We noticed that we just don't have that, so let's go out and bring that in January. That's what January business should be about. It should be about just filling those little holes, not the big holes, not the big issues. When you're currently sat in mid-table, you're not looking over your shoulder, you're not necessarily in a playoff or a promotion battle. It's just filling those little gaps so that we can make sure that we are at least somewhat stable for the second half of the campaign. Seems to be that's exactly what we're doing. You know, look, just as what you were saying earlier on with Fleetwood, Burton are going to be a club very, very similar to that this season, by the way, because they spent money in the summer like it was going out of fashion. The amount of money that they were spending on players that probably weren't really worth the amount of money that they were spending on them. And now look at where they are. You know, and it doesn't always work like that. It doesn't always correlate to let's just spend loads of money and you'll suddenly get all the best players. And you'll suddenly be at the top end of the league. It doesn't work like that. And look, JJ McKiernan, if Skubala's saying that one of the big reasons for him going out on loan was also to make sure that we could get a little bit of wages in and have a bit more of a bigger budget for this window, chances are then Burton are probably paying quite a high percentage, if not 100% of his wages, considering the amount of money that they are throwing around as well. So I like the idea that we're thinking about bringing in a bit of experience. Look, I love a young player. I think they're the statement signings. They always are. But in a January transfer window where we've picked up on the fact that that's what we need, perfect. It means that the club aren't being stubborn like many people think that sometimes they can be when it comes to signing only young players. I mean, Tendai Derek was obviously the big exception to that. And I understand he's one exception to a rule over the past however many years. But yeah, I think it just takes a really it's reactive, yes, but it's also a bit of a proactive approach this January transfer window by making sure we are filling those gaps and going into the loan market if that's what's going to be better both financially for us and kind of maybe for future opportunities as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reactive more than proactive because I think we're looking at what the situation we've got, and we've gone. Alan Hansen's going round in my head. You won't win anything with kids, and we're looking at this going. There is an opportunity still here. Yeah, okay, we are, I think, 9 points off the playoffs now after a terrible Christmas, but we were further adrift when we started our run last season. I think still a playoff push is doable if we start picking up points. But we've got to get some experience. We've got some talented young players. And I don't care what anyone says. Jovan McCarmer is one of those. Freddie Draper is one of those. And it seems to me at the minute, you're either one or the other. You're either Ray Draper or McCarmer. Like, my dad can't stand Draper, but he loves McCarmer. There's other people that don't like McCarmer and say, why ain't Draper get? And even, Bailey Kadamatra, we've got some young players peppered around the side, even the likes of Dylan Duffy coming on. Jack Moylan is still a relatively young player. We need a little bit more experience. And I think if we've got a little bit more experience to help out the likes of McGrandles, who's experienced, Tendai Derek and O'Connor, Arahan isn't he's played a lot of games, but he proved at Bolton Wanderers that he needs perhaps a little guiding hand as well. So, speaking of Bolton Wanderers, that was a really quick segue, by the way. So speaking of Bolton Wanderers, we play them tomorrow night in the virtually nobody's watching trophy. It's for a place in the last, 8, 16, something like that. I lose interest until it says semi-final, one game from Wembley, and then we all go, ooh, here we go. Really interesting. While you were talking a minute ago, because I haven't had a lot of time, I was just looking through their last game against Huddersfield, which they won 3-1. They played quite a few players who haven't started an awful lot of games. Lolos, who did start against us, scored for them actually against Huddersfield in the last round. But he started. Luke Southwood in goal, hasn't played an awful lot of goals. Randall Williams, I think he was the boy that was at Exeter, wasn't he? Was that Randall Williams? We were heavily linked with him for a while. He's one that hasn't played all that many games for them. So you expect to kind of a little bit of a second string. We will almost certainly be a little bit weakened as well, I think, given that the Northampton game isn't a must-win, but it's as close to being a must-win without actually being a must-win that you get to. So they're quite hard to preview, these games. But all joking aside, get through this, and Wembley actually does then begin to look an awful lot closer, doesn't it? We can't sit here and say, well, Bolton are definitely going to play this, they're definitely going to play that. Not particularly. But it's interesting. And Kate here, bear in mind that there is negativity around Bolton. There's a clip going around of a fair number of Bolton fans cheering their team conceding goals as they want their manager sacked. It's a club where there's some toxicity around. Is it a winnable tie? How do you see it going?
Every tie's a winnable tie. I think we've shown that in many a cup run over the past few years. Just not on Saturday. No, look, it's we can definitely get a result. Bolton are a team who are actually a little bit on their arse at the minute. There's also that clip, I believe, going around of Ian Evatt basically saying, look, you ain't going to get any better than me, sort of thing. There's no point sacking me. Sacking me doesn't change anything. And I mean, he's got a lot of confidence for a man whose side are struggling quite a bit in the league this year. But it's I said struggling. Yeah, I wasn't going quite as far as saying below was, It's difficult. Again, you can't really read into it. I think we've just got to play our game, and I think we've said it a lot over the past few weeks on this podcast. We can only focus on ourselves, because if we put the best of what we can put out there, we'll beat most teams in the division. But we're just not doing that on a consistent basis. So it doesn't really matter who it is that we're playing, because you're sort of going into it thinking with that kind of lacking of confidence anyway. Look, I don't know. I'm intrigued more on what we can do. I'm trying to think. So Oisin can still play on Tuesday night, can't he? There's no kind of like cut off, is there? So let's say we got to the final, I believe he can still play in the final. So that that would be big. So I'd like to see him get some minutes again. Just try and just mix things up a little bit. Potentially Tuesday night's the night to. I don't want to say experiment, because we don't want to use a cup competition that could get us to Wembley to experiment, but also it's probably a little competition than what a league game is. Well, you're right. You just kind of froze there.
I'm here now.
Okay. No, okay, that's fine. So yeah, I'd be up to kind of see us do something like that. Just do something a little bit different and shake things up a bit, especially if Bolton aren't going to play a first string team, even though they have got quality in depth as well in certain areas.
Yeah, I mean, they'll just start Dion Charles, who hasn't been starting. He's been one of the best strikers in League One over the last couple of seasons. So it's another big tie. I think Michael will see it in two ways. It's the sort of game where actually, if we're on it, it is going to be winnable, because it isn't going to be Bolton's priority, just like it's not going to be our priority, just like it wasn't Huddersfield's, which is how they lost to Bolton in the last round. And it's at a point now where actually win this game, and then Wembley does become real. And I think this is the game where it becomes a thing. You lose the one in January, and I think it was around the same. We lost to Accrington a little bit earlier a few years ago. We lost to, who did we lose to on penalties? Morecambe probably, or was it Morecambe a couple of years ago as well? Off the top of my head, you get to the next stage, and all of a sudden it's real, and then you start thinking, as Danny Cowley did back in the day, well, let's start playing a full first team. And I think we did that when we got to the semi-finals against Sunderland in 2020-21 season. So yeah, I think it isn't the big game it isn't a big game in real terms, But I think in terms of importance, it could be a bigger game for the club than people realise. Because I think if we turned Bolton over tomorrow, that's the win that gives you confidence going to Northampton. And Northampton's a game we should win on Saturday. If I'm sitting here, and I don't know if I'm on the podcast in a week's time, but if in a week's time I'm talking about progressing in the cup and beating Northampton, we're in a great place. If in a week's time we're talking about going out of 2 cup competitions in a week and dropping more points, it feels like it's a really pivotal time. And lots of people will look at tomorrow's game and go, well, I'm not going to that because it's the crap trophy. I'm not going to that because you'll play a second string. I'm not going to that, etc., etc. And I wasn't going to until today, and I've changed my mind because I just have this sneaky feeling that to beat Bolton, it's a similar stage to the one that we beat Peterborough at as well, I think, isn't it? When we went all the way to the final. It's a similar stage. I'm not sure if it's the same stage. Big games. All games at the minute are important. We need wins. We need something to lift morale. And Jova Makama coming on and becoming the only, I think, the 4th player in history or the 5th player in history. I did an article on it, and I forget now, to score in all 4 competitions that he's eligible to play in would be huge as well. So I would very much like to see that.
Yeah, look, I think I said it this time last week. I was on the podcast with Ben. I can't remember if it was Thursday or last Sunday, whatever it was. Anyway, he was talking about actually how big the Birmingham game could have been for that, because no matter how kind of poor we've been in the league, if you win in the FA Cup 3rd round, you get to the 4th round and you get a Premier League tie, suddenly it just builds up a load of hope and a load of kind of confidence, and the Lincoln Loco's back going and all of this. Now, look, the Virtue Trophy or whatever they want to call it this week doesn't give you that same kind of jovial feel. Of course it doesn't. But like you say, you win 1 or 2 of the games, suddenly you're eyeing up a spot at Wembley. And if we finish this season in 12th place, in 5 years' time, people are going to think of this season as the one that we've got to Wembley again. Not the season where we kind of just faltered to a 12th place finish in League One, in what was actually a really tough League One. So it doesn't make or break the season, but it certainly goes a heck of a long way to, I think, winning on Tuesday. And like I say, this is now the start point where it really does begin to get serious. When we lost last season against Accrington and, we went out to that last-minute goal by Longello, you sort of think, look, it's a shame it happens, but it's competition now. We just don't really need to worry about. And bearing in mind, that loss, I believe, came during or just after what was our pretty poor run in and around the Christmas period as well. But nobody really cared about it too much because we then went on to do something more. But this kind of has the opportunity to be the total opposite of that, and the flip side of that of now, let's now actually pretend that we care about the competition again for the next couple of weeks. Until then, we're potentially eyeing up a trip to London.
It actually came it started the bad run. We were actually unbeaten in 4. We'd beaten Orient and Cambridge, drawn with Barnsley and Wigan, and then we lost 1-0 to Accrington, then drew with Reading, lost 4 on the bounce and drew 3 on the bounce. So it was part of that negative run. Well, just to say one thing that Michael has said for the game in his interview. So he's put, we need to keep focus and do what we did in the second half against Birmingham, keep those performances going. We have tweaked and changed at times, but we want to get back to how we want to look and how aggressive we want to be with and without the ball. And at times that's not always pretty. We thought we needed to move in the right direction, but we never really changed. If we follow the process and we work hard on the training pitch, which we do every day, the results will come. It would be very, very nice if those results came tomorrow. Now, I've got a section here that says questions, but we have had the question, which is all very good. So we will move on to the final thing, and that is running. Woohoo! It's basically just a plug. So there are actually 2 plugs. So I'm not going to do running first of all. First is the Graham Bressington John Schofield night. So that is the 24th. So that's a week on Friday. It's coming around fairly quick. We are hosting a night, or I am hosting a night with Paul Degare, with Graham Bressington and John Schofield. Tickets are £7.50. We have sold 50% of those already at last check, so it's doing really well. And I'm going to be doing another push on that through the course of this week. It promises to be a really good night. I mean, I can't remember if I spoke about it with Chris the other night, but John Schofield obviously is a former manager, a former player. He's going to have some great stories. We might have an opportunity for a Q&A from the crowd, and it'll be a bit different to the Q&A in the fan zone, I think, because in the fan zone it's very fan friendly. But I think you get a little bit more honesty when the beers are flowing. And as for Graham Bressington, someone I can't keep going on about how much I've been excited to nail him down. one of my favourite players of all time. Funnily enough, I was actually yesterday researching a game that I'm going to write up hopefully tomorrow, which was we beat Wrexham 4-3 in 1989 around the 14th or 15th of January. And I think it talks about how John Schofield and Graham Bressington were playing in it. And Bressy had a nightmare, was at fault for at least one, if not three, of the Wrexham goals. Schofield was outstanding. Really good reading. But it harks back to that kind of era. And there'll be a lot of people listening to this who don't know who either of those players are or don't remember them as players and wouldn't have a huge interest in their stories. But it's just going to be a really, really good night. And there will be a raffle. Hopefully we're going to get some raffle tickets on sale beforehand. There'll be a signed shirt. There's a limited edition. There's a gin box, so a bottle of gin and bits and bobs from a gin club. There'll be a few other prizes as well. So we're going to get that moving at some point this week. So if you go to tensiontwistedrealities.co.uk, the tickets are on sale there, £7.50. Regret that there is no disabled access. It is upstairs and it is actually up some stairs, so our apologies for that. But Tension Twisted Realities have been brilliant. They've given us the venue, the bar will be open, and it promises to be a good night. And Blue Monday is this Monday coming, isn't it? That's the Monday before payday after Christmas, where everybody's a little bit Friday is the payday, so it'll be the first opportunity to wash away those post Christmas blues. I mean, you're not coming.
I don't think I get paid till the following Monday. No, I can't afford it. It's Blue Monday.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but it does sound like it will be a great night, and I'm very jealous of those that do get to go. If I was still in Lincoln, I would definitely have been up there. You know, I don't miss an event like that, so I'd have definitely been there.
I'm quite excited because I haven't hosted anything with Paul live. So Paul and I have done lots of stuff on podcasts before. So Paul, for those who don't know, was a keeper for Sheffield Wednesday who came on loan to City, didn't play a game in the 94-95 season. Really, really nice guy, doing my personal training for me as well. Gav Gordon will also be there. So it's just going to be good. And the venue closes at 10:30. The idea is perhaps pop along to the Birdcage, see if we can't get Bressy on a few more and get a few other stories out. I know there's a story he tells about the PFA Awards in 1988 that involves Liverpool, but I'm not sure if that's something that he'll tell. Certainly not something that I would tell. I've heard it secondhand, but I think get a couple of beers down him and we might hear that. So it's going to be great if you were a Lincoln fan between the kind of 87 and 94-ish, or if you want to hear stories from John Schofield, come along. Finally, there's the running. So I'm just going to push it again. So when I started doing the London Marathon promo, I was told, yeah, it's great. It'll go off like a rocket. You'll raise loads of money, and then there'll be this big lull in the middle where there isn't anything. And that's where we are at the minute. So we've had a couple of donations. I'm up to over £1,000 now, which is really good. The target's 2,000. Obviously, there'll be the profits from the raffle. There's a book that I will be announcing very soon. I probably want to do a football shirt as well in conjunction with the foundation. So I'll discuss with those tomorrow. But I'll be doing an update later in the week. Training's going well. So I did a 7-mile run last Thursday, which was just round here, up and down hills, marathon pace. I did it's meant to be 9 mile, but a 10 mile on Saturday in the freezing cold conditions. And tomorrow is another one of my interval runs. So yeah, thank you to everybody that's supported me so far. I will be pinning a post onto the site and pushing it more on the social media. So please, if you do have a spare £5, maybe people might look to after Blue Monday, to be fair, because I appreciate it's tough. But I've got to hit that £2,000 target, and I want to hit that £2,000 target for the foundation. And tomorrow we will see why. So there we go. Go what, Charlie? Go on. What you can say?
I was just going to say, fair play. I gave up with all of the running stuff. I did the 10K walk round
on the start line.
Hey, I was not. No, you're not trapping me in that. I've very much given up on all of the running stuff. I sit there and I think I want to get back into it. I don't have the motivation to do that sort of stuff. But for somebody who has so outwardly stated before how much you hate running, to kind of take on not just doing, because if you're doing the marathon for yourself, that's one thing. But then choosing to do it kind of for the foundation for other people, and then kind of going tomorrow, for example, to see that the personal outlook on that as well, and not just kind of this big charity where you don't really see where the money goes, that sort of thing, probably makes it kind of that little bit harder task as well. But also, it probably gives you a lot more motivation. So yeah, huge credit on that.
Well, I'm doing this running book, so basically it's just to help people who are like me, who think running's crap. just a few practical tips I wish I'd known, and then a kind of a diary leading into the London Marathon. I did today's entry at tea time. I actually made a confession. You know what? I've realised I don't hate running anymore. I realised actually I really, really enjoy it. It's just now I'm at a point where I'm not concentrating on can I do it. I know that if somebody said to me go and run 10 miles now, I'd go and run 10 miles and come back, and then I could go out for a drink afterwards and be laid on the sofa. I've got to that point, and now I enjoy it. Like I went out Saturday rather, and I went kind of up past Goltho where my grandparents used to live, and then round by Kingthorpe and then back up Stainfield. My nan's in Willen House there, and past a place we used to live when I was a kid. And it was just, just like getting out. There was no cars because the roads were icy. It was absolutely incredible. And I had a bag of jelly babies with me, which was equally as important. So I really like jelly babies. And I've never eaten a jelly baby thinking this is something that I should be doing until yesterday, where I'm eating jelly babies going, this has been recommended. So, I like running because of jelly babies, basically.
What a day. That's a great excuse to enjoy and to actually have the jelly babies as well. Did you do a Christmas morning run by any chance?
Yeah.
Were you one of those? Yeah.
I did that. Yeah.
So I was walking through the square on Christmas morning. I was walking down to my friends for Christmas Day, and there I am. I've got a bag full of bottles, and they're rattling around in this bag whilst I'm walking down, and I've got people running past me. I was thinking, what on earth is wrong with you? But again, fair play. Definitely not my sort of choice on Christmas morning, but each their own and all that.
Right, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, that's been episode 349 of the Stacey West podcast. It's actually been incredibly enjoyable considering we're talking about yet another defeat. Hopefully, by the time that we join you later in the week, we'll be talking about progression in the virtual trophy, and we can look ahead to Northampton. Thank you to everybody that watched. I think we peaked at 45, which, considering we gave you 15 minutes notice and it's not the usual night, is really good. Thank you to everybody who's listening at home. Your support is always hugely appreciated. But until next time, up the Imps.
Up the Imps.